logging train that run away. So here's the story according to the way my granddad told it, and this is the way I'm going to tell it tonight. So the story of the time my granddad had to run away with his logging train. First, I want to give you some back history of my family. My dad was Scotch-Irish. Dad's father came from Green Hill, Ireland, and his mother was Scotch. They settled at Cumberland Gap. I'm not sure which side of the gap it was. My mother's folks was Pennsylvania Dutch. They also settled close to where Dad lived. Of course, as you know, Dad and Mom did get married. They heard about the big money in Washington, so Dad, Mom, and Mom's family all moved to Washington. Dad at Little Falls, Granddad at Toledo, but they were only 3 miles apart. It is about halfway on I-5 from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, where they lived. Dad bought a hotel, and he and Mom run it. That was where I was born. Some years earlier, there was a settler that had hogs. Some got away and went wild. Well, when someone wanted meat, they would go up in the wilds and try to shoot a hog. Now getting to the story. Granddad told Uncle John and Uncle Arthur to take his horse and see if they could go up in the hills and shoot a hog. By this time, Granddad was an engineer on the logging train that hauled the logs from the woods to the sawmill. As there was no logging trucks then. On this day, Granddad had hauled one load to the sawmill. On the way back, he saw my uncles not far from the tracks. They had killed a big hog, and of course, out in the wilds, they skinned it. And they asked Granddad what to do with this hide. He told them to drag it to them, and when they got back in the woods, they would throw it off. They went back in the timber, loaded the train, and headed for the sawmill, several miles away. My granddad's name was James Little, L-Y-T-T-L-E. The fireman said, "Jim, we forgot that hog hide. What will we do with it?" Granddad said, "We have a hard grade ahead, so just push it in the firebox." Well, it was almost full of wood, and there was more fat on that hide than they thought. The fireman got it all in. Grandpa looked down at the gauge, and it was on danger. He told the fireman, put all the cold water he could in the boiler. By this time, Granddad had the throttle wide open. They hit the long grade halfway up. The safety valve popped open, and he said, for once, they didn't slow down going over that grade. You see, the sawmill was in the valley ahead. Well, they came off of that hill with pop-off valve wide open. Grandpa blowing the whistle. He knew if they tried to slow down, the boiler would blow up. So he just let her run. You see, there was a track going west. Well, Grandpa said he was going past the mill, and it was just a blur. He had the whistle wide open, the throttle wide open, the pop-off valve wide open as it flew by. Well, they got about halfway out of the valley, going up the other grade, when it was safe enough to back down to the mill. Granddad said for 3 years, men tried to figure out why that train run away. The only thing Grandpa and the fireman said, it had to be the wood. wish I could tell this like Grandpa. You could have felt the vibration. So they would tell, I remember Grandpa telling about one Sunday sitting on his porch. The same highway past his house that is now I-5. He took a piece of paper and pencil, counted the cars, he said. He knew people wouldn't believe him if he told them how many there was. And he said he couldn't even hardly believe it himself, because in that day, 22 cars passed his house. Of course, he counted them going and coming. We have been on that same road, 4, 6, and 8 lanes in places to Seattle. He would have needed a lot of paper and a lot of counting if he kept track of them today. If you look for Little Falls on the map, it is not there. When the railroad came through, they changed the name to Vader, as there is a Little Falls, Idaho, and they couldn't have 2 Little Falls on the same line. But my birth certificate says Little Falls. Hope you like this. That was about the best I could come up with.